Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Takes with Tre'Shon Diaz. I'm, of course, Kevin Knight. We are here on the Dirty Birds of Brews podcast, presented by FanDuel, to bring you our take on the Falcons' first win of the season, taking down the Minnesota Vikings in convincing fashion on Sunday Night Football. Not really the game I think anyone was expecting. Probably not the schedule makers either, Tre'Shon, when they set this one up. It felt like I was watching like a 1990s, like early 2000s type of game on Sunday night. That's not the game that I ever thought the Falcons would play or win, but much less like win completely convincingly. Like, I can't remember the last time the Falcons won a defensive slugfest, and not only won but like dominated it in pretty much every facet. Pretty crazy stuff.
It was, and like you said, I think the craziest thing of all there is just the fact that the Falcons had so much trust in their defense, which it's just a lot of rookies, a lot of second-year players, a lot of guys that coaches would be terrified of leaning on in these situations, but they had to. They really didn't have a choice, and that defense came through, and it was something to see. It was a great performance from them and from the special teams group. It was just a really great bounce back for those special teams guys as well.
Yeah. Special teams was a big winner of this as well. The coverage units were fantastic all night. I think the Vikings returner was kind of feeling himself after week one, and he returned everything, and he didn't have to, and that Falcons made him pay, which you love to see. It was really a three-phase win, the first three-phase win, other than the Giants game, which, it was the Giants. It was like the number 3 overall pick Giants. I think the Vikings are definitely better than that.
Giants.
Yeah, the Drew Lock Giants. The Vikings are definitely better than that. I think there's a lot of questions about how good exactly Minnesota is, and I think that's fair. I mean, they were down their starting left tackle, and by the end of the game, they were down their center as well. I think Rouse, who replaced School, was actually an improvement over School. So I know people are like, oh, they lost School too, but I think Rouse was actually better. He didn't really get beat like a drum like School did by pretty much every Falcons rookie. Pretty much every person who lined up against Justin School got a sack at some point. So, I mean, the Falcons found a pass rush. It's crazy. They found a pass rush. They flipped the script entirely after week one, where they simply couldn't run the ball. And they put up 218 rushing yards against a Vikings defense that is known for being very difficult to run against. The biggest criticisms coming out of this one, I think, have to do with Zach Robinson and sort of the way that the team didn't really ever utilize play action, and the offense felt very limited and really struggled in the red zone and some things like that. But it ultimately, I think you were saying this before the show, the strategy, when you look at it in the totality of the game and what was going on, there is a line of sense that goes through it. And to me, that I'm willing to I will criticize, because I think if we could execute play action, I think you could have blown the doors off this Vikings team. I understand, I think, why they didn't. And it's also why I'm not panicking, because I think the lack of play action to this extent, I think they ran 4 play action plays in this game, which is nothing. I think there was a reason for it, so I'm a little bit less upset now that we've seen the totality of the game. But I imagine we'll spend a fair amount of time discussing, the Zach Robinson offense and the struggles, while also acknowledging that the offense did exactly what they needed to do to win this game by multiple scores, even though it was kind of ugly as hell for long stretches. It was enough to get the job done convincingly. So, I mean, how many criticisms can you have, really?
Yeah. This is a tough league, man, and you have to be able to find ways to win games. It's not always going to be able to be done, in the most desirable way possible. And so the Falcons had to rely more on the run. And I think I agree with you. We kind of looked back and, on those 4 play action plays, one was the Drake London fumble, which looked like it was going to be a great big gain.
Sick throw, by the way, too.
It was an amazing throw. It was definitely Penix's best throw of the afternoon. And then the other one was the incomplete screen to Bijan. That was the first one where it just hit the turf. And then we had a Pitts first down for 12 yards. And then the fourth one was a 10-yard sack on Penix. And so, I think the Falcons really wanted to try And, again, we've been talking about this. You can call more than 4, Zach. You can call more than 10. You're still going to keep the defense on their toes. I think he was just being like over the top with trying to like really catch them off guard. But the team also just wasn't really able to deliver. And I think it just kind of spooked him a bit. And he was like, okay, we're just going to keep pounding the football and rely on our defense and get out of this one with the dub.
Yeah. And thankfully the game plan going in seemed to be play it as safe as possible. This is a dangerous defense to throw over the middle. This is a dangerous defense to take shots against. And this is one of the most difficult defenses in the NFL to play, especially for a young quarterback on the road in an excruciatingly loud environment. Like, it was critically loud. Like, and Zach Robinson obviously needed to get those calls in much faster. That was a big problem. Like, and Penix was getting frustrated with it. It's like, if you can't hear and you can't communicate easily, you can't be getting these plays in with 10 seconds left on the clock, because Penix can't just yell the call. He has to like walk up to everybody and like phone tag it down the line. Like, it's going to take 15 seconds to get the call out. And I think that was part of it. And I think that was part of the calculus as well, that like, okay, we might have to play a much more conservative brand of football today because I think the key in this one was not making mistakes. And because they apparently had so much trust in their defense, which I think you could argue was probably misplaced before today. Like, it was absolutely not misplaced. The defense completely shut down the Vikings, except for maybe 2 plays, one of which was an overthrow by McCarthy that could have been a touchdown. And then the other was like a 50-yard play before the half that set up a field goal. But other than that, the Falcons completely shut down this Vikings offense. And in hindsight, it looks like the plan to just keep the ball safe and grind out as many yards as you can, grind as much clock as you can, and just don't put the ball in harm's way, don't give the Vikings any possessions. It was clearly the right call. You come away with a 22-6 win, and as uncomfortable as it felt because the margin was so narrow, like, the Falcons never actually were in much danger. Like, watching the game live felt very different than watching it going back, because you watch it with the knowledge that they will win by 2 scores, and you're like, wow, they totally dominated from top to bottom. They were never really threatened by the Vikings. But live, it was like, wow, we're only up by 6. We're only up by 9. This still doesn't feel very safe. And then eventually, they kind of, so it was a very different experience on rewatch. But in totality, it's like, as frustrated as I was during the game about the lack of play action, it seems like that was not necessarily a like total scheme decision. Like, I don't think the Falcons are like just anti-play action. We're not going to ever run it. Like, I think that is maybe too extreme of a take. I think looking back, I can now see that it was a clear decision in this game that the Falcons didn't want Penix turning his back to the defense, and they had to sacrifice that explosive play potential and the great potential of play action to really unload against the Vikings, essentially, in exchange for safety, not taking sacks, not risking sack fumbles, that sort of thing. And in hindsight, I think that clearly looks like the right call. But it was frustrating during the game because this offense really didn't have a second pitch other than just hand the ball off. Thankfully, that first pitch, that like 100-mile-an-hour fastball, was working really well, and it was getting, they were able to sustain some drives and stuff, but they just weren't able to punch it in until the very end. So it was frustrating to watch, but I think it makes a lot of sense in hindsight, and I'm less critical knowing, that the plan that they had going in actually did make sense and paid off in multiple facets.
Yeah, and I think that there could even be an argument made that they had some in-game adjustments take place too. The offense definitely got a little bit more one-dimensional as the game went on, and that's just kind of how the flow was going, right? Running the ball was working. We all love to see Michael Penix throw the football. It's quite the sight. But this just wasn't really that game. Like you pointed out, Flores, and we saw this with Todd Bowles last week. The goal is to make Penix make a hasty, quick decision. They're trying to force the ball to get out of his hands as fast as possible, throw a bunch of different looks at him, hope that he makes the wrong decision and take advantage of it. And what's funny is the Falcons pulled the same game plan, but used it against J.J. McCarthy. And I think it's a good example there of showing you the difference between the two quarterbacks and kind of like understanding how Penix did a good job of like managing this game and not compounding any issues or errors. In that first trip to the red zone, he missed Kyle Pitts in the end zone, who was there for a wide open touchdown. Bijan dropped the ball on that same play, which should have been a first down. So, 2 critical errors there. And then on the next play, he's just not able to get that ball to Darnell Mooney. And, I think that Zach and the offense were just kind of, like you said, they did a good job moving the ball, but they had to kind of change their plan in that part of the field. It didn't really go too well, but hey, John Parker Romo stepping up and having the game of his life. I think he probably did not think that he was going to be asked to make 5 field goals in his debut against his former team, no less, but he answered the call. And, I thought the offense did a good job of at least not shooting themselves in the foot beyond a couple of crucial sacks that took place, right? This team, at the very least, you can say they did not make the situation dire. They did what they could to help out the defense, to try to win the time of possession battle. And, it didn't look pretty, but they got the dub. And that's really all that matters at this stage.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't always have to be pretty. I think we've all been conditioned to love pretty performances, big scores, all that. That's kind of what the NFL's morphed into. Every once in a while, I mean, the Falcons just couldn't win this type of game. This was very much like a 2008 Matt Ryan type of game that we haven't really seen the team like operate this way, where you've got a quarterback that is really quite young, is really talented, but you don't really want him to be like this. This was something I was thinking of watching this game, is that the Falcons protected Michael Penix in this game. They were like, we're not going to make you try to beat the Minnesota Vikings defense on the road and make you the engine of our offense. Do we think you could if we need to? And do I think that they may have switched to a more more versatile passing attack if they had fallen behind? Yes, I do think they would have been forced to give the reins over to Penix. I think they didn't want to, because it's a tough spot, and why take the chance? Like, Penix has been very careful with the football, but like, you start getting pressure, you start hanging back there and having to pass the ball, things can go south. And instead they were like, we're going to lean on what we think the biggest and most consistent strength of this team is, the run game. We think we can run block a lot better. And as much criticism as I have for Robinson's lack of play action, I still think they have to find a way to incorporate that, and I hope that they will. His plan to take advantage of the Vikings' run blitzing aggressiveness was perfect. And Bijan was the perfect runner to make them pay as well. Because even if you've got man-on-man on Bijan, like dead to rights, it doesn't matter. Like, he's like, especially if he gets a clear sight that you're coming through the A-gap, he's just going to dance around you. And we saw that over and over again. Like, even on the small runs, like, the Vikings are so, like, it's so critical for their defense to be getting those tackles for loss on those run plays, setting up the 3rd and longs for their, pass rush and stuff like that. They even, like, when the Falcons were only getting small gains, they weren't getting tackle for loss. There was only a handful of negative run plays in this game, which is really impressive because that was their bread and butter last year. This was a great run defense. And, I think Zach Robinson, for as much maligning we can get over the play action and stuff like that and the red zone issues, came up with a really smart and effective strategy for the ground game. But I think the other side of it is looking at how the Falcons handled this versus the Vikings, where the Vikings put this game in JJ's hands. Like, this was their plan, was we trust JJ McCarthy completely. We think he's going to have a great game against a Falcons defense that they were justified in thinking probably isn't very good, right? We know the Falcons defense, it has not been good for a very long time. Maybe Ryan Nielsen's version back in 2023 was, a little bit above average, but nobody really is scared by this defense. That's probably going to change now, but like, going into this game, I think it was reasonable to think that, we don't need to put the training wheels on for JJ against this Falcons defense. We think we can win this game with JJ McCarthy. They put it all in his hands, put it all on his plate, and he got frazzled. I mean, this is like the opposite of what I was expecting. I was worried that JJ would have a great game. The Falcons wouldn't, maybe they wouldn't be able to carry over the pass rush. They wouldn't be able to stop the run, and the Vikings would just have a field day, and then we'd have to be playing catch up all game, and that's the perfect situation for the Vikings defense. Instead, it was the opposite. The Falcons defense were all over McCarthy. Their strategy didn't work. He made mistakes. gave the Falcons tons of short fields for them to stack up an early, small but early lead, and then it was the Falcons defense that got to tee off the rest of the game and basically took the Vikings' biggest strength out of it by not really giving them an opportunity to pin their ears back. And I think it's like one of the biggest things we heard going into this game, and then I'm going to let you talk because I've been talking for like 5 minutes. This is ridiculous.
You're cooking. Keep going.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, guys. This is not just my show, okay? This isn't Space Ghost Coast to Coast, all right? But just everybody talked about how the Falcons were going to get outcoached in this game, how good KOC is, how good Brian Flores is, and that's absolutely true that those guys are great elite level coaches, but the Falcons outcoached them, and I think that is the biggest surprise takeaway from this game is that as maligned as this staff has been from Falcons fans especially, but from others, like, is this coaching staff really good enough? You know, they've got the talent now, but is the coaching staff going to hold them back? They came out in a huge spot in prime time on the road against a very difficult opponent and outcoached them. Outcoached the guys that were supposed to be two of the NFL's best coaches. I mean, that is maybe the most encouraging thing about this performance.
Yeah, and, you know, a couple of ways to look at that and how we can quantify that. So Zach Robinson completely flipped the script on his personnel usage this week and rolled out with 12 personnel on about 80% of the plays. That's the biggest flip that he could have possibly made. And like you were saying, it paid off. The attack, the run game, and I pointed this out earlier last week that the Falcons had one of their best days and one of their most creative days on the ground against Brian Flores last year. That game ended up getting out of hand due to a turnover on special teams and a couple of other things, but the Falcons were getting like anything they wanted on the ground, and we saw Robinson have one of his more creative days, and that carried over to this one. We saw the resurgence of the Tyler Algier fullback dive. They whipped that out last year. We saw them use a lot more 12 personnel. We saw them really make an effort to get the Y insert plays that they were running with Charlie Warner that just were not hitting against Tampa Bay. It turns out not playing Vita Vea helps. You know, they were getting those new inserts going, and they were getting all these new looks out there for the running attack. And then I just really liked the distribution between Algier and Bijan. We went hot and heavy with Bijan early. It was throw as much Bijan as possible, and then we pull Algier in for the closing shift. You let Bijan work a little bit more as the receiver. I thought he did a really good job of just utilizing his running back stable this week. Had a little bit more difficulty with that last year, kind of really trying to figure out that flow, and it didn't seem like he had any issue with that. And then I think the most underrated coaching adjustment that it's not being talked about at all is the fact that AJ Terrell left this game
at halftime.
And at halftime. And when that happened, I remember sitting there thinking, I'm like, this is about to be a completely different game in the second half now. And it wasn't. And you can even make the argue that the defense didn't just survive without Terrell, but they kept thriving. Honestly, you know, they had 5 sacks in the first to just, I think it was 1 in the second half, but the pressure stayed there. But you could really see that this team didn't miss much of a beat at all, and that Ulbrich was able to just keep the ball rolling. And like you mentioned, that's something that a lot of people did not believe this coaching staff like had within them, the ability to outcoach KOC and Flores, because that is what happened. I thought it was baffling that O'Connell said that we're going to put the ball in JJ's hands here and really try to ask him to win this game. That to me just seemed, I mean, he had a nice fourth quarter, but against the Bears, but it's not like he showed enough to do that. And Ulbrich, you know, was like, okay, great. We're going to lean on my guys. I'm going to show you a bunch of different 5-man front looks. I'm going to show you some mugs with Divine Diablo and really just kind of do a good job of getting everybody in the mix. It was a very, very well-coached group today. And then the other guy who we did not mention, but Marquise Williams got his special teams unit right. And I mean, they couldn't have probably had a worse debut than they did last week. And there's no way that Marquise was happy with that performance. And it was a completely different coverage unit out there. I mean, they were dominating on kickoff, on punt, kind of any phase. Mike Ford is out here scaring people with his voice. He's causing fumbles with his with his siren like screams. That's probably one of the best individual plays you'll ever see. This
The
man
dude
didn't
pissed
have
his
to touch
pants.
somebody.
That and the Brandon Dorless cackling after the false start. That was one of my two favorite like audible plays in the entire game. I died.
Great.
I died after that Dorless cackle. He was like,
Man,
they have so much
you love to
confidence.
see
It's
that.
wild.
Exactly. The energy is so different with this group, with these defenders, with these players. And I think we're really starting to kind of see, why the staff was so excited about all of the youth on this roster, because these kids are bringing the energy.
Yeah, and I think that also ties into the coaching. I tweeted it out during the game, and you were on Nate Ali probably before anyone. And it's only been 2 games, but like a lot of this personnel, especially on the interior, is exactly the same as last year. Grady Jarrett's the one notable loss, and might be not so happy with what's going on in Chicago right now, unfortunately. But
not too happy seeing what's happening here with that.
Yeah,
He's like,
not like
"Oh,
it was
now?"
his choice. I mean, like I think the Falcons asked him to take a pay cut, and he said no, which I respect. Get your money. He's towards the end of his career. Would have loved to have Grady back. Obviously, I still wear my Grady jersey very proudly, and I'm sure he'll have a happy homecoming in Atlanta eventually. But like Nate Ali has completely flipped like the way these guys were playing from a year ago. I think that's a huge difference, but it's like just the difference. Like I feel like we're just kicking the crap out of Jimmy Lake. Like he's been dead for like a year, and we just keep coming back and kicking the corpse more. But like this personnel is not that different. Like I mean, they went after a bunch of like older veterans last year, and they did that too. Like this year, I mean, they got Leonard Floyd, who's even older than Matt Judon, but he's already I think played better than Judon did last year. And then, like just Ulbricht's defense is just night and day, and like the secondary got a couple new faces, but like that's not I think the only reason they're playing better is like they're contesting throws, they're aggressive, they're blitzing a lot, but it's like. It's not like totally reliant on the blitz either. It's just so much better coached. Like that, and I think the team feels so much more confident in what they're doing. They're not thinking as much as the complicated Fangio style coverage rules that they had to do in Jimmy Lake's team. Everyone looked worse last year, and everyone looks better this year. And it's like the biggest thing that you point to when you see that dramatic of a shift is that the coaching is just. It was the coaching. It was the coaching last year, and it's the coaching this year. And that is how you get a dramatic shift in defense. And right now, the Falcons are the number 2 defense in the NFL, like in total defense. And I think they're 4th in scoring. Like, I mean, if anyone had told me opening the season against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Minnesota Vikings on the road that the Falcons would be 4th in scoring defense and 2nd in total defense, I would have told you were high. Like, you were just totally high. You just took the biggest bong rip of all time. And, like, we're just like, yeah, man. Oh, they're going to be so, like, or you're just a complete homer. But here we are, Tre'Shon. Here we are with a completely reshaped defense. And not just reshaped. Like, it's like Raheem knew. And he's like, yeah, no, like, I completely trust Jeff Ulbrich. We're going to run this conservative game script on offense. We're going to ground and pound and just trust the defense is going to get it done. And they were completely right to do that. And like, I don't ever remember the Falcons trusting their defense in the last like 5 years to this extent. Just like, you just have to tip your cap, because not only did they totally like they fixed 2 of their biggest issues from week 1. You mentioned the special teams and the kicking game. They did not waste any time moving on from Younghoe Koo, who we might hear that he's been being released any time now. And they fixed the coverage unit. And they fixed the rushing attack, which was totally anemic against the Bucs. And like you said, Vita Vea definitely has a lot to do with that. He's amazing. And the Bucs run defense is just really good. But so was the Vikings last year. And, I think part of that is like the offensive line getting to play together and all that. But just like the coaching staff, like that's what you want to see. If you make mistakes, if you come out flat and you have a bad game, are you able to recognize what went wrong and actually make changes? That's what separates good coaching staffs from bad ones. And I think so far, like they started with some struggles, but this week we saw them make the necessary changes that they could make in a week's time and come out looking much better. from week 1 to week 2. So I think you just have to tip the cap. And everyone's saying like this coaching staff is terrible or sucks or whatever. Like after week 1, I think you could have been mildly concerned. I don't think they were terribly coached in that game. It was a bit of a slog, and it clearly wasn't what they wanted. Week 2, they beat the crap out of like what is considered to be one of the best coaching staffs in the NFL. So, I mean, after 2 weeks, you have to be feeling good about the coaching staff. So I still don't. People will still come in and say like, "Oh, Raheem needs to be fired." It's like you can't like you have to take the data as it comes in. You can't just hold on to that like forever. Like give the man some credit for rolling out a really smart and like controversial game plan, I would say, in week 2 that absolutely worked. So this is me giving you props, coaching staff. Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, Jeff Ulbrich, you guys deserve some props for week 2's performance.
Yeah, they really do. And, you know, we're measuring what's taking place in 2025, like you said. There's really nothing, there's no benefit to looking back and trying to pull up things that happened from last year, because we're focusing on the here and now. And this team, you know, especially this defense, man, it has just looked extremely competent. It's just, you know, the offense is still working through some issues, I think, with their penalty troubles and execution, things like that. And some stuff makes sense there when you know you're dealing with, you know, second string or third string right tackle. It seems like Nuzil's still trying to get comfortable as well. And so, you know, the Falcons are dealing with issues of their own, right? Like people are also kind of looking at this team like it's the same one from the spring on paper when they've had to deal with injuries and issues of their own. Something looks off with Drake London, you know, and I don't know if he's still dealing with issues from that shoulder injury, but he's not kind of been the guy that we were, you know, expecting to see here through the first 2 games. We know they didn't have Mooney. Mooney's first game was last night. He also looked a little bit rusty. We didn't really see him get involved until the game was going. And so the team is working through these things. And they didn't let any of these things stop them last night, because everybody's dealing with injuries. Everybody's dealing with these execution errors, because they take place, you know, in every single NFL game, and they didn't let those things beat them. And that just kind of feels like the biggest difference between this coaching staff this year and the ones that we've seen before, is just the ability to move on and just let the bad plays fall off of you when they happen.
Yeah, exactly. You got to move forward, because every NFL team is going to have some stinkers. I mean, and nobody's immune to that. You know, I guarantee you'll see the Bills drop a game, and the Ravens blew a lead to the Bills. Speaking of the Bills, like, you know, and they blew it, you know, like the Ravens started 0-2 last year. They were fine. Like teams have stinkers. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
What matters is like, is that stinker going to be a harbinger of your season, and you're not, and you just double down on what you did in that game and you don't fix the issues, or you're not able to figure out what's causing the issues? Or do you take the information you gain from that game, figure it out, and fix it, even if it's little by little? Because that's how this works, realistically. I mean, you don't usually see the drastic week-to-week shift like we saw from week 1 to week 2 for Atlanta, but, like, we need this team to take small, consistent steps forward every week. And part of that is going to be, like, just get the run game where it needs to be. From week 1 to week 2, it definitely looked a hell of a lot better. Also, Elijah Wilkinson shout out. Like, I mean, he's definitely not the worst player on the offensive line right now. I know you have takes about that, so I'll let you talk about that in a second. But like Wilkinson, like, I think he's Storm Norton level is what it looks like, and that's way better than I was expecting. For a guy that hasn't really played tackle in years, and as a run blocker, I think he actually looks like pretty good. Like, I mean, definitely. Someone that you can run behind. I think the pass protection is very inconsistent, and he had that false start, but again, really tough place to go play. Like, I don't mind if you get a false start every once in a while on the road in a hardcore primetime. Like, that is going to happen. But, like, just don't do it at home when everything's chill. Like, if we can just avoid that, it's going to be okay. But I know you have some offensive line takes too, so I don't know if now is the time to move into.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned, the weirdest development so far is that the left side of the offensive line has been a little bit more of a concern than the right side. And so last night, you know, we're still seeing Matthew Bergeron struggle with stunts and communication. And it's really, there's nothing complicated about it. He is just being far too aggressive in pass protection, latching onto guys as they're moving away from him, putting his head down too often, and he completely misses the looper or the cross man that's coming for the setup, and it's led to 2 sacks now. And I think, like, while it is a frustrating and annoying because the two of them should have pretty good communication at this point, working together for 3 years, it's somewhat, understandable. But what really is concerning me is just kind of seeing Matthew Bergeron struggle to anchor and lose his one-on-one reps. Jalen Redmond just absolutely bull rushed him for the sack last night. One-on-one, there was no stunt or anything like that, and he's just really struggling and letting guys get into his chest, get inside of him, which I've always felt that Bergeron's biggest issues have been as a run blocker. So that's kind of what concerns me more so, is just seeing this this regression as a pass protector, because it's not what I had. It's not what I was prepared for this year. I could have understood if maybe he didn't take the step as a run blocker, and it's kind of like, all right, that's just kind of who he is. He'll always be better in pass protection than he is as a run blocker. But he looked better last night as a run blocker, like only struggled to reach a couple of his blocks, but for the most part was fine. It's just as a pass protector, on all 3 sacks, Matthew Bergeron lost his rep. And it's just something that we weren't really expecting. And if you told me, Elijah Wilkinson was the one struggling more, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. They got the 3rd string right tackle who's really a better guard. Yeah, I kind of would think he has more trouble. But, the Falcons clearly feel the pressure, because I think the biggest thing that indicated that they're worried about interior pressure was the Charlie Warner, Charlie Warner running back package we've seen, where he's just this dedicated pass protector to help pick up those guys inside, and to give any chip help when necessary. So Atlanta is like recognizing, like, we're having issues with our interior pass protection. Uzil hasn't been great, but he hasn't looked like that much different than the guy we saw last year either, in my opinion, which was like replacement level,
sort of
like
average
starting center. Yeah, like you knew what you were getting there. It kind of felt like, you understood that this was maybe the peak of this player, but the expectation was the guards around him. We know Lindstrom is Lindstrom, and then McGarry was going to take that step, and Bergeron was going to take that step. And we just haven't seen it yet. And so it does give me a little cause for concern, especially as we look at these teams that are ahead here in the early part of the schedule, that there's going to be some unique looks thrown, specifically at Bergeron. I expect to see some more exotic stunts continue, and we'll probably see multiple different kinds at this point, because defenses are just able to see on film that he's struggling with them right now.
Yeah, that's going to be the point of emphasis, I imagine, for him, because that's the biggest issue on the inside right now. I think we all expected that Nuzul would be sort of an average pass blocker, and I think the hope was that he could improve as a run blocker, because that was where he struggled the most last year. He definitely had a much better game on Sunday night than in week 1. So that's encouraging in that department. And if he could continue playing like that, you're willing to live, again, the same thing with Dahlman. Like, you're willing to live with average pass pro if you're going to be a really good run blocker. And through 2 games, it's averaged out to be like a little bit above average, but that game against the Vikings was very good for Nuzul, very encouraging. Hopefully you can keep that up. But yeah, I mean, right now it's like, the good news is it doesn't look like Elijah Wilkinson is like tanking this offensive line. Like, we saw what that looks like with Justin School. That is not happening in Atlanta. And Elijah Wilkinson was one-on-one with Jonathan Grenard on many occasions, and like, it wasn't a disaster. So again, props to Wilkinson, props to the coaching staff for getting him settled. But at this point, it's just, just got to keep up that level of play, and just hope that Wilkinson continue doing that, as the Falcons get, again, they've played 2 of the most like aggressive defenses in the NFL back to back. So, and they've managed to handle it. It hasn't been pretty all the time, but like, the Bucs are one of the highest blitz rate teams in the NFL. They absolutely did that in week 1, and the Vikings are the highest blitz rate team in the NFL, and they absolutely, I think they blitzed on like 50% of their snaps in week 2. So the Falcons have so far been able to survive that onslaught. Now they get to go up against the Panthers pass rush, which should be a little bit of a reprieve. They still have Derek Brown, who's excellent, but otherwise much easier overall to go up against that Panthers pass rush. And hopefully this can be a game where they can settle down a little bit and get their feet under them a little bit more, as long as they can figure out what to do with Derek Brown. Feeling pretty good about that matchup. But O-line has not been as, I think that was one of the red flags going into these first couple games, is like, oh God, is Elijah Wilkinson just going to get absolutely demolished? And he hasn't. So props to him, props to Newsel for being, what we hoped, which is a starting level player that maybe has growth upside, especially as a run blocker. Now we just need Matthew Bergeron to get it together. And, hopefully they can just focus on that. I think the clear emphasis this week was like, we got to get the run blocking fixed. And they probably just drilled that as hard as they could. It paid off. So maybe this week is like, all right, now we need to clean up some of this pass pro, some of this stunt stuff. We're going to really work that hard this week. Maybe can have a similar bounce back against the Panthers, who probably aren't going to do as much exotic stuff. I would be shocked if they don't do any, but it's like it's probably going to be a little bit simpler to handle this week than it was the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and just to kind of build off your point about the defenses that they've seen so far and the game plans against Michael Penix, obviously Todd Bowles and Brian Flores are known for their exotic blitzes, known for bringing the pressure. But when you look at the Atlanta Falcons and you look at what you saw from Michael Penix at the end of the last season, why in the world would you ever want to give him time? Teams are not going to let us take shots. Like, I keep seeing people being like, the Falcons need to take deep shots. They need to do this. They need to do that. And it's like, yeah, man, there's a reason they aren't. Nobody wants to let Michael Penix get in rhythm and start ripping off some of those crazy throws that we saw at the end of last year. And this is what good defensive coordinators do. They make quarterbacks win in multiple ways. This is Steven Ruiz put out a really good quote passage this morning talking about Patrick Mahomes, and what truly made Patrick Mahomes great was that you could say that Patrick Mahomes might not be the single best quarterback when it comes to individual categories, like who's the best pocket passer, who's the best dual threat, who's the best deep passer, et cetera, but he is top 3 in every single one of those categories. And that makes him far more valuable than just being good at one thing. So what we're seeing right now is great for the growth of Michael Penix, because Michael Penix is going to have to beat defenses in multiple ways. We talked about this last year, being able to throw the same pass 100 different ways. It's the same concept, same rationale. And this is only going to make him a better player when he understands that he has to be patient and he can't turn the ball over at all in these circumstances. He needs to be the point guard instead of the shooting guard. And so anybody that's, got a lot of future bets on Michael Penix's yards or anything like that, I wouldn't get too concerned at all at this stage, because I think that he's just going to be able to operate the game plan however the Falcons need it. And if it calls for him to take those shots, if Atlanta gets into those favorable situations, I think we'll see it. But there's a lot to be said about what we're watching from the quarterback position right now, because I think Penix had probably like a midday overall, but it says a lot when he's not compounding these issues. And like, we've seen quarterback play here the past 4 years, and it just kind of seems like whenever one bad decision is made or whenever something isn't going their way, the issues get worse. They press, they make too many mistakes, and then they dig and put the team into a hole. And we have not seen Penix do that. Even if he wasn't spectacular, you can't really look at him and go, oh man, he was giving the game away last night, because he wasn't, and he did a really good job.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people were frustrated that he didn't take some shots and that he held the ball a little too long and stuff. And I think that was very much the game plan, was like, this Vikings defense is one of the most difficult to read. It's one of the most dangerous to throw over the middle against. It's one of the most dangerous to throw quick outs against. Thankfully, Andrew Van Ginkel's not there, because he has made a career out of picking off those little quick outs and stuff like that coming out of the backfield. I think the game plan was clearly like, just if you don't see it cleanly, if it's not open, just don't rip it. Don't rip it unless it's there. just hold the ball, take sacks if you have to, don't put the ball in harm's way, and we're just going to grind this out because we just think we're just straight up better than the Vikings. Like, we think our defense can shut them down, and we think our run game is strong enough to keep us going. And the Vikings were committed to cover two. They continued to play cover two pretty much all game. Even when the Falcons basically stopped throwing, they still kept two safeties back because they were so afraid of play action. The Falcons didn't really run play action ever, but they were so afraid of somebody getting loose and Penix just ripping it that they continued to play two high safeties pretty much all game. And that obviously, like, the threat of that is what all the Arthur Smith teams lacked, that they just couldn't threaten deep. They couldn't threaten enough with their quarterback or their passing game. Teams just didn't feel like they ever had to play too high against them. And when you're keeping that safety in the box, it's so hard to get consistent runs out of it. The Falcons right now are terrifying a defense like the Vikings enough with the threat of the passing game that we still haven't even really seen yet. I mean, we saw it against the Panthers last season where they just dropped bombs on them all day. But, like, the Vikings respect the threat of that deep ball so much that they have to stay in cover two, even though the Falcons are running for 200 yards on the ground. That is the difference between these teams and the Arthur Smith teams. They finally have the quarterback and the weapons that teams really have a difficult decision to make on every single play, which is like, do we play cover one to stop Bijan, or do we risk, and risk the big plays, or do we play cover two and just kind of live with Bijan kind of chunking away at us all game? And Vikings were clearly committed to the second strategy, and I think they also trusted that their offense would be better, right? I mean, I don't think they would have played that strategy if they were less concerned. But again, we saw, like, Penix was not the focal point. The Falcons didn't put him in that situation where he had to be the face and the engine of the offense on the road. And they leaned on the part of their offense that should theoretically be the most consistent and dangerous. And it worked wonders, even though it was ugly at times and the red zone was not great. They held the ball for like 36 minutes and they won by 2 scores, right? The Vikings put the ball in their young quarterback's hands, made him the star, and, they got punished for it. He put the Vikings in bad situations over and over again. And I think,
pressure to sack ratio is brutal.
Was nuts. He was responsible for several of those sacks. And I mean, part of it is just the Falcons were relentless. Like, it was waves. It's like what you talk about with these defensive line coaches. We need waves of pressure. The first guy is going to get him off his spot. The second guy is going to get the sack. And we've seen in years past, Falcons had, like, I think at times last year, we saw the Falcons getting a decent pressure rate, but it was one guy getting back there and there was no one else. Yeah. And so it was just a step up in the pocket. Yeah, it's a pressure, but like it's not ever going to be a sack. This year, we're getting the pressure and the sacks, and I think the Falcons are like second in the NFL right now in pressure rate and sacks. So, or something in the top 5, which is, again,
I think those are both correct.
Yeah, anybody that had put a bet on that, I would have told you were an insane person. But it's 2 weeks. But yeah, I mean, the Falcons just, I don't know what else to say. I mean, they just outcoached the Vikings. They had the better strategy. I think it was a controversial one to put it all on the ground and play a conservative game. But they were right. They were right to do it. And they were right to trust their defense, which I didn't think I'd ever say that. It's not something I was expecting to be talking about after what we saw in week 1.
No. And in week 1, we still saw that high pressure rate, right? Yeah. So, there will be people mentioning, like, well, is it just because they played, this kind of like a group of misfit toys that was the Vikings offensive line? And that definitely, factors in to the equation. But we're seeing consistent pressure for the first 2 weeks. We saw the rookies finish off those pressures this week, which was something that wasn't happening before. And I just think that you, like you mentioned, Kevin, it says a lot that this team was able to kind of stand by their plan for this game, because a lot of people did want them to throw the ball. Dan Orlovsky came out last week after the game and said that the Falcons' one of the biggest changes they need to make is they need to air out that football. They need to throw the football deep, this, that, and the other. And that was a terrible game plan for going up against Brian Flores. And it just kind of ignores all the factors at play here, dealing with Elijah Wilkinson, trying to mitigate that as much as possible. dealing with the injuries to wide receiver groups and things like that. And so this staff did a really good job, I think, of bouncing back after the disappointing outing in week 1. And there's definitely things to clean up, but it's always good when there's things to clean up and you still got the win. And this team, we've talked about it. The schedule in the early part of the season is going to be tough, but they've, all of the games are still winnable. Like, yeah, you're going up against the Bills, but the Commanders, that's a very beatable football team. The 49ers, like the Saints, like the 49ers beat the Saints, but I mean, that game was not a runaway for most of the part. The Saints only lost by 5. And so, we talked about not getting too obsessed with strength of schedule and things like that, because the NFL, the great thing about this league is that there is parity. Like, as much as people want to try to complain or think that they know what teams are good and what's bad, I thought it was so funny that tweets were going viral about the game slates yesterday, saying that there weren't going to be any good games on. And boy, everybody could not have been more wrong. That was probably one of the best NFL week 2s that we've had in a long time. All these games are coming down close. They're coming down to the wire. And it just really gets you excited to think, that the Falcons could come out of this opening game stretch at 500 or better, going into that very critical bye week that we were all so angry about.
Yeah,
when it was first announced. And that couldn't have gone better for Atlanta at this point, who desperately needs that week 5 bye.
Yeah, it could be good timing, and again, you just, from a more meta perspective, you have to avoid 0-2. It is the death sentence for pretty much everybody. There's going to be one team that starts 0-2 that's going to make the playoffs. And the Chiefs are 0-2. So you don't want to have you don't want to have to be the other team. You don't want to have, if the Chiefs are 0-2, you don't want to be 0-2. No. So I mean, last year it was the Ravens, right? It does happen. One team that goes 0-2 every year is probably going to make it, but at this stage, the Falcons really needed this win, and we talked about it last week. You got to find a way to get it, and they did. They played a sort of game script that we weren't expecting. I'm sure the Vikings weren't expecting it, and dominated. Didn't just win, but were clearly the better team on the road on Sunday Night Football. You love to see it. This isn't even like last year's win against the Eagles, which was very impressive. Don't get me wrong, but they needed some help in that one, and I don't think they were clearly the better team throughout that game. So this one was much more convincing in my opinion, even though the quality of the opponent, the Eagles, was better. You take any win you can get against the Eagles and you're happy with it. So there's definitely some things to clean up, but you feel great rest of season. At 1-1 now, that just it opens everything up. Beating a team like the Vikings on the road, you feel more confident now about this team's ability to go win against some of these teams that are contending for the playoffs, instead of you're 0-2 losing against the Vikings, and now you're like, well, hopefully we can beat the Panthers, but where are we finding these wins? You're a lot less concerned about that now, and at 1-1, you're feeling pretty good going into a week 3 game against a Panthers team which has just been absolutely decimated on the offensive line at this point. Robert Hunt tore his biceps; he's probably out for the season. Austin Corbett tore grade 3 MCL sprain, but I'm pretty sure that's basically a tear, whatever that means. And he's probably not going to play till late in the season, if at all. So now you're feeling really good. But I guess before we get into the other stuff, we probably should shout out the rookies. I think that the rookies deserve their time in the sun today.
Yeah. And I mean, we've had some good problems to have today, not knowing where to start, but let's start with the Energizer Bunny. Let's start with Billy Bowman, because
this is your guy,
man. Yeah. And Billy is such a Falcon at heart, because he had a moment there where he gave everybody a good scare, but I think that wide open missed touchdown from JJ McCarthy at the end there was really just savvy gamesmanship by Bowman. Kind of left that player open just enough to make JJ choke on that play. But let's talk about the interception. I mean, it's such an instinctual play when you go back and look at it on the comeback route. Bowman, He knows that he's manned up and that he's probably going to get targeted on this play. The Vikings ran some motion and he followed the guy over. And so, he knows that he's probably going to have an opportunity to get targeted on this play. And he baited McCarthy just enough to give himself the opportunity to get that interception. It wasn't the best throw, but he ran that route for the receiver. And I mean, it just kind of looked like one of those things where all of the work in the film room showed up on that moment and was able to be just a football player and react on his instincts after putting in all the work. And, he's still just bringing it in the run. I think at this point for Billy, it's all about kind of getting under control, just kind of having a little bit more, I think, not awareness, but just doing a little bit better job at kind of knowing when to tone it down so that he can break down a little bit and make some of those plays in the run that we know he can. But it's just been exciting because this was probably like the biggest risk and biggest experiment that the Falcons were moving forward with going into this season. Is just going to be like, hey, we're going to commit to this position switch with Billy. We believe that playing him is going to be the best thing for everybody, and it's hard to argue with the results so far.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, this is another change that they made last year. Didn't play the rookies. And again, I told people, it's like, that's not really, I don't think that's really a Raheem Morris decision. I think, again, he wants to be the CEO. He wants to trust his coordinators to do their jobs, and he wants to be more of the overall guy that's going to provide support where needed. But he wants to focus on the game management. And I think that was part of his game management struggles last year, is he had to more or less take over the defense at times. This year, they're playing all the rookies. The Falcons probably have the highest percentage of defensive snaps for rookies. I haven't checked that stat, but I would be surprised if anyone else is playing 4 rookies on defense, right? So, we need 4 starters. Arthur Blank, you got him. So I mean, Billy Bowman, again, it's kind of remarkable, how quickly he's acclimated. He definitely played some slot at Oklahoma, but he was mostly a safety. And again, it's a very different position, but you can just tell why they went with him, and it's because he is completely fearless. He does not give a shit. He gave up that route to Jalen Naylor and just didn't, it didn't phase him in the slightest. And he made a mistake, but you need that, especially for these young guys, they need to have any corner at all, really. I mean, defensive backs in general. You need to be insane. You need to be absolutely crazy and just irresponsibly confident at all times, because you're gonna get your ass kicked pretty much every week. You're gonna give up a play. You can't, and that's why people are like, oh, why are they celebrating after a pass breakup that they didn't even have anything to do with, or when the receiver dropped the ball? Because these people gotta be crazy, man. You gotta have the DB mentality. You gotta be chirping, you gotta be talking trash, and you gotta be celebrating every time, even if you had nothing to do with the play. You're out there celebrating, because it's such a mentally challenging position. Because your job is basically to not get beat. If you can make a positive play, that's great. But defense in general, especially the DBs, just don't get beat. And you're gonna get beat, but you just have to get beat as little as possible. And you can tell Billy Bowman's absolutely got the mindset for it. That man is a kamikaze missile right in the middle of the defense. Not the cleanest player, not always making the right decisions, but the short area burst is really impressive on that interception. The Falcons didn't have that in their slot corner last year, and you have to be able to contest those quick outs from the slot. And if you can't, you're going to get picked apart on that route. And we saw that all last year. The Falcons played with so much cushion on those routes. They were just giving up that play every time. You have to threaten that route. You have to make it dangerous, or the teams are just going to throw it over and over again. And after that pick, teams know he is threatening that route now. That has been established in the film study. If you're not careful and he's too close, you have to really consider whether you want to throw that route, because he could get it. He can get his hands on it. And he's got to clean up some of the more advanced stuff. I think he's got to clean up the deep coverage a little bit. And Watts too. Watts was also very good in this game. He did take the cheese on that end of half play. And it's just a rookie mistake. You can't take the cheat. I get that you want to be aggressive there, and in a non-end of half situation, it might be worth it. But it's all you have to do is keep them from getting in field goal range. If he's gonna run a comeback on a Hail Mary, you let him run the comeback. Like, you let him do it. Let him do it. And you just you keep your depth. And if he catches that comeback, you're going to go make an easy tackle, right? So just a rookie mistake, and he's aggressive. He's going to make some of those. But ultimately, you give up 3 points. Not the end of the world. And just these two secondary guys, like this is the new face of Atlanta's defense. And it's looking good. You love the early returns from both these guys.
Yeah, you do. And, just something else, like you were saying, for people who don't buy into the whole Raheem Morris CEO thing, like there's a reason Jay Rodgers was fired too. Like we talk about Jimmy Lake, but I'm in full agreement with you that Raheem Morris empowers his coaches. You talk to any of the coaches on his staff, and they all talk about having full, creative freedom, the ability to make decisions. They're empowered coaches. This is not a micromanaged group of individuals. And there's some people who, maybe they wish that there was a little bit more micromanaging last year. And hey, Morris took over for Lake when he needed to at times, and then basically gave him the keys back and said, okay, you have to earn your keep because I am not here to call plays. I'm here to manage this team like CEO style, like you said, and he couldn't get it done. Jay Rodgers told Raheem Morris all last year, no, Rook's not good enough. He's not ready. No, Dorless isn't good enough. He's not ready. Is a load of crap. Like, I'm sorry, but like, there's a reason that you're not employed anymore. And these guys suddenly look like they're worth the investments that they were made, that the team made in them last year. And so, I think that we really love what we've seen from Nate Ali and this new crop of guys who believe in the talent that's on this field. And so one of the guys that this staff has legitimate belief in, and hopefully this quiets down some noise about him, is Jalen Walker. And Jalen Walker showed you why he is not playing linebacker and why you need to stop asking for it. He is good at what he's being asked to do. This man is a wrecking ball in the run game. And these are some of the things that people aren't probably noticing or paying attention to, but he is absolutely obliterating pulling guards and tackles like in the game right now. He's just blowing them up in the backfield. We're seeing him win with athleticism. He just shot off the line on that sack in the red zone too. Very like it's so much more difficult to get a sack in the red zone than it is in any other part of the field, because that ball is getting out faster there than it is anywhere else. But was so quick off the ball. He whipped out the double hand swipe, didn't slow down or anything. Like, you can see he's been working on the bag. He's been going through and really practicing on repetition and getting these moves down so that he can pull them out when he has the opportunity. He was on the field for, I think it was 31 snaps, including special teams last night. And he is a plus addition for this defense. And he is an edge rusher. He is an outside linebacker, and he's doing the job well. So please stop asking to move Jalen Walker inside, because here's the other thing. Who are you taking off the field at linebacker for him? Because I can tell you this right now, he's not going to be as good as Divine Diablo, and he's not going to be as good as Caden Ellis. The best chance for him to play and develop and keep growing on this team, on this defense, is on the edge, and he showed why last night.
Yeah. For this season, it's always like, and the Falcons were very clear about this. He's going to play edge rusher. We're going to make sure he knows how to play edge rusher, and then we'll consider what else we're going to do. And like long term, it's like, especially what we saw Caden Ellis do tonight, where he did actually rotate down to the line of scrimmage quite a bit. That could be Jalen Walker's future role, but not now. Like, he's a rookie. Let him play where he's the most comfortable. That's clearly on the edge. He doesn't have the linebacker instincts. And like, yeah, could he eventually do what Caden Ellis did in this game at a high level and probably be a higher upside player there, considering his athleticism? And I think when he's been asked to play coverage in college, like, he has decent instincts for zone coverage and stuff like that, but probably better than what Caden Ellis offers. But like, don't ask him to do too much right now. That's how you get, some of these guys that just never really find a home because they're just trying to do too much. And you don't really want to go down that path with a guy like Jalen Walker, who clearly not like already missed a lot of camp and preseason, kind of nursing some minor injuries, but you just have to be careful with that and not overload a guy. Let him do something well immediately, and then we could talk about building out, additional roles for him. But if he's good enough as an edge rusher, like edge rusher's much more valuable than inside linebacker. Like it just is what it is. So like if he's a great edge rusher, we don't even need to. That's the same thing with Micah Parsons. Like Micah Parsons is very good off ball, but he's an elite edge rusher. So why would you ever bother giving him off ball snaps unless there's an absolute emergency taking place? Like it's just not necessary, right? And so the hope for fans should be that Jalen Walker is so dominant as an edge rusher that he never has to play off-ball linebacker. And again, the biggest issue for me with his projection was like, can he hold up against the run at his weight in the NFL, playing on the edge? Or are they going to have to rotate him, off the line of scrimmage sometimes to protect him? So far, he looks just fine against the run. So, like, that's maybe not an issue. But that sack is exactly what everyone who was super high on Jalen Walker was looking for. Like, he has unreal levels of body control, and his smaller frame actually makes that possible. Like, a lot of these big bodied edge rushers, they can't like upright themselves after hitting the dip move that quickly. Like he basically stood up straight after getting past the tackle and ran straight to McCarthy. A lot of guys, they'll have to run the arc and loop back around. He was able to just get under the tackle and stand up completely straight and chase down the quarterback like a linebacker. I mean, that's unique athletic ability. It's not necessarily testing. You can't necessarily really factor that in with like testing numbers like a 3-cone or something, but it is the body control and the ability to straighten and get back into an ideal situation to make a tackle. That is, I think, his most special trait, and it's why many teams were super high on him. And I'm happy we were able to see a glimpse of that so early in the season. I didn't know if we'd have to wait a little longer considering how much time he missed in the preseason.
Yeah, and that's a really important thing to note too, Kevin, is that like he basically missed like 2/3 of preseason. So he's like still just kind of getting going and everything like that. And I was assuming he's 100%, but do you want to talk about Pierce here next?
Yeah. I mean, we all know it. Like his trump card is explosiveness, and like as soon as he like sees the quarterback's number like right in front of him, he closes that gap so fast. It is crazy. Like it's just like he not even like ideally, like he kind of gets past on the stunt. And like the offensive lineman still kind of got a hold of him, and it just doesn't matter because in 2 steps he closes so fast McCarthy doesn't even have time to react to it. Like that short area burst that he's able to just kind of activate from almost any body position. Like again, he was not like a Jalen Walker where he was able to stand up straight and get right back into an ideal chase position. He's kind of like ducking under and like taking in the middle of a step, and he just explodes into McCarthy from that disadvantageous body position. Like you could tell why some people were like, yeah, this dude has special talent in that regard. I think the 27 always throws me off when I see it. It's like, is that Richie Grant? like what is it? But if he's good enough, he can wear whatever number he wants. But it's a little scary sometimes. But yeah, I mean, just you love to see it. Again, he's like one of the top pressure players on the Falcons. And like he was really close to a strip sack too, like an inch, where he came around the arc and just swatted and missed that ball by like a centimeter. That was another strip sack right there. So close, but
I think he gets a sack if he doesn't go for the strip there. I think he would have been able to get it, but I love seeing the aggressiveness.
Yeah. So I mean, you couldn't really ask for much more from either of these guys, given the context, especially for Walker, where it's like, I think there were reasonable questions about like how quickly can we get him on the field because he didn't practice much. And then Pierce was like, you were basically hoping to see this because he was the standout of training camp, and it's not, and we were like, okay, is it going to translate? We've been baited before. Okay. Like from training camp.
Too many times.
It's translating. Now again, like neither of these offensive lines have been at full strength. They're playing sort of reserve guys. The Bucs technically were playing their reserves more on the interior, and they kicked Graham Barton out. But the Vikings definitely were playing reserve tackle. He did not handle it well. But at the same time, like we've seen this Falcons team do nothing against bad offensive lines in the past. That is not the case anymore. If you don't have a good offensive line, like I'm still not convinced that they're like a great pass rush against like good. Like would they do this against the Eagles? Probably not. Not many pass rushes can. But if they can just do this against bad offensive lines, that's already such a huge step forward where it's like, yeah, if your offensive line is struggling, the Falcons defense is going to give you hell. Like, I don't remember the last time we've been able to say that. So that is, no matter what, like that is a big step forward.
Yeah. And the craziest thing about James Pierce's season right now is that he had actually less total snaps than he had last night, but he still managed to end up with 15 pass rush snaps a game. But on 30 pass rush snaps, this man has 8 pressures. And I like that is let's do some quick calculus here. So yeah, he's got a 27%. Go figure there with the rocking that hideous
now
number.
I know what the number means. Yeah.
27% pressure rate right now, which is just that's unreal. And we're talking about when you're a designated pass rusher, like this is something that we've been trying to talk about. Like, oh, maybe Arnold Ebiketie can get to this level. Maybe some of the other guys we've had that come through this building can get to this level. We have not had somebody actually start off and really live up to that role the way we've seen James Pierce Jr. come in just across these 2 games and just wreck shop. And just knowing that this is on limited opportunities, he hasn't even really gotten these starting snaps or any bulk snaps yet like that. It just gets you excited for the potential that this player has. You and I both were pretty adamant that like this is going to be the better pass rusher like to start off and maybe in the career between him and Walker, because they're just 2 different players and things couldn't really be going better right now. And he's good because he's doing it in number 27.
Yeah, that he was starting off from a disadvantageous position with that number choice. It was a bold one. And the fact that he's still playing great is really meaningful, I think. But again, it was like, I think the Falcons knew, like, and again, this is part of the strategy. Like, Jalen Walker is a project. He's an insanely high ceiling project. Again, this is a guy that has Micah Parsons' ceiling, right? Isn't Micah Parsons right now, but has that type of ceiling. He's got a similar build and similar special traits, but didn't really have the college production that Micah had. Micah had just absurd college production, right? Someone that's going to need a little bit more time. But the Falcons were also like, they loved James Pierce because I think they knew this is the guy that's going to actually help our pass rush like right away. We know what he does is going to translate and it's going to be effective. But like, they found a way to get both. They're like, this is perfect. We can get James Pierce in here. We can get Leonard Floyd in here. And those are 2 guys and Arnold Ebiketie too, who we haven't even talked about. But again, like they have all 4 of their edge rushers. I'm happy with all of them. Zach Harrison too. Look at that man. That's like a 285-pound man just screaming off the edge and destroying JJ McCarthy. You love to see it. But like it just, you don't need Jalen Walker to be incredible right away because you made the bold move to get James Pierce. Now all 4 of these guys can play like 25% of the snaps, and or like, I mean, they're playing more than that, but it's like, you kind of can split it up and rotate all of them. And, as long as everybody stays healthy, like this is a really deep room and every one of these guys can rush the passer and bring you something against the run. Jalen Walker, I think, is better than expected against the run early. That carried over from college. Pierce is fine against the run. But Ebiketie's been really good against the run. We know you can generally trust Floyd to be where he's supposed to be. And then they got Zach Harrison playing some edge too, who I think is definitely their guy that they want as like their run heavy sort of guy. They've really reshaped this room dramatically, and their aggressiveness in addressing it, a lot of people questioned it, and we're going to question it all year up until the playoffs are assured. We're going to be questioning, like, was this the right call to give up a future first to get James Pierce Jr.? Maybe I was kind of like wondering if we would know the answer by the end of this year or not. But I mean, I think it's very possible we might know the answer by the end of this year. And if they make the playoffs and Pierce is a big contributor, then I think there's no question that, like, yeah, it was worth giving up a pick in the 20s for picking the 20s last year. We got a long way to go until that victory is assured, obviously. But so far, I mean, the dividends from this draft class, this is, last year's draft class is going to have Penix in it, which will probably go down as like, that's a big plus, obviously. But I mean, I think we're looking at maybe the best 2 draft classes of Terry Fontenot's career back to back here. Like, Because
Oh,
now we're
yeah.
seeing Rook and Dorless also. We haven't even talked about yet. They both had their first sacks today too. Like, I mean, Dorless's cackle, I'm just dying about that. And then the next play, he almost like dumpstered the running back in the backfield too. Just like it's all coming home. Like everything that went wrong last year and their refusal to play these guys, the Falcons are getting the benefit this year because nobody knows what the hell to expect from Dorless and Rook. They're out there playing major snaps, wreaking havoc, and then all the defensive rookies from this year are out there making plays. So, last year was tough to sit through, but it seems like the Falcons were able to finally kind of do what they wanted. Like, I think Fontenot's maybe a little vindicated because from the last two classes, because it's like maybe Rook and Dorless are good, and it was just Jimmy Lake's fault all along, and it wasn't that this was a bad draft decision. So still a lot of room to go before we know for sure, but for as many questions as we had about Fontenot going into this draft and the decisions he's made and the aggressiveness, like he might be coming off his two best draft classes at this point. Early returns, obviously, in 2025 make it look like this is definitely going to be his best draft.
Yeah, you really couldn't ask for a better start if you're Terry Fontenot, who is legitimately feeling pressure coming into this year because, like you said, when we're looking back, it hasn't been great, but these past two draft classes really seem like they're starting to come on. With 2025, we're being cautiously optimistic, but they've shown us a lot of things to just kind of make you get excited about this. You mentioned, Penix is definitely going to help, but like, man, if Rook and if Dorless, if they play like they did last night, and I mean, Brandon Dorless's first step is just lethal. People they just can't touch him off the line, and it really is something to watch. But if these guys can continue to build off of that, because we're talking about two players who maybe, I don't think they maybe barely had 100 snaps combined last year. I don't know if they even really break through that threshold. They're all doing their own player development, going through it, getting their first real live action reps consistently. And that other guy that we talked about, Zach Harrison, he's finally like, yes, thank you. I'm glad that I can finally see the field after you guys have been making me go through all different body weights, this, that, and the other. They finally figured out a role for Harrison that everybody seems to like and is yielding great results. And so you just really got to tip your cap here to the Falcons that after making some day two investments, really jumping in hard this year, going day one after the pass rush group, after making a wild move, from most people's perspective, to draft Michael Penix the year before. This team does not care if they're doing it the quote unquote right way. If this is how, whatever these unwritten rules are that people love to act like exist, where they say you're not supposed to draft a QB when you have another one on the roster, you're not supposed to trade away a future asset for a first round pick. Well, we're gonna find out if that's true or not. And so far, it's looking like the Falcons have made all the right moves when it comes to their recent draft picks.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Like, you can do anything you want if you win. If you win, you can do anything you want. You could be as crazy. Look at the Rams. They were like F them picks, and they won a Super Bowl. So who cares?
Won a Super Bowl.
So like, if you're good, if you can win, you could get away with a lot. You could take a lot of chances, but you just have to find a way to win. And so far this season, at this point, like, I think they outplayed the Bucs in week 1. They did. And they just didn't get it done, and that sucks. It's going to happen sometimes. They didn't just outplay the Vikings. They destroyed the Vikings. The Vikings had no answers to anything the Falcons were doing. Their defense played a hell of a game and did everything in their power to keep the Falcons out of the end zone, and it didn't matter. Like, they still lost by 2 scores. With the Falcons going like 1 of 4 in the red zone, they still lost by 2 scores. The Falcons could have won. They could have put up 30 easily in that game if they had played a little bit better in the red zone. And it's all about the defense. Like, the defense showed up and dominated. And I don't remember ever seeing a performance that dominant by this Falcons team. Again, and they've played some cupcake offenses over the years. Like, last year they played that Giants team with Drew Lock, right? They played them well, but they wasn't like this, where there was just outright dominance. And I'm just really impressed. You couldn't ask for a better bounce back performance from a coaching perspective. The defense kept it going, and the offense fixed their biggest issue from week one, which is not being able to run the football. One thing that I thought was really interesting that we haven't covered yet was like, and you did mention it, like the 12 personnel. Like we talked about that going into the season. Like there might be a case for the Falcons to be a 12 personnel primary team because they clearly like Charlie Werner a lot. And shout out to him. His blocking was drastically better this week, so good for him.
Yes, it was.
Drastically better. Kyle Pitts as that sort of quasi 11-12 player, like this might be like what we've been looking for, which is like he's giving you a lot more as a receiver than a typical wide tight end there, or like even like a slot tight end. He's got the deep speed and the ability to threaten and the catch radius that a tight end just doesn't give you unless you're talking about really elite guys. And he's better, I think, at this point than a receiver as a blocker. Like I think that's one area that he's taken a step forward in, is he is a average-ish blocker now, which for a tight end might not sound impressive, but I think compared to a receiver, he's a much better blocker than all but like, the greatest receiving blockers out there. So if he can be that guy that's like more dangerous than a typical tight end as a receiver and a better blocker than a receiver, that could be the perfect role for him and allow you to play this 12-11 sort of hybrid offense where like he could play a traditional tight end role or a slot receiver role on any snap. And it's really hard to determine what he's going to do. And like this is good for so many reasons. It forces defenses to make a decision. Do you play base against this package or do you play nickel? Like, do you trust any of your linebackers to cover Pitts, or do you, to have a better chance against the run, or do you go to nickel to try to slow down the passing game with Pitts? I think you always want to force your opponent to make difficult decisions. It's way better than any other alternative. And I think that this is a situation where this might be like the ideal situation for this offense is Kyle Pitts is your third target that's out there all the time instead of Ray McLeod, who this isn't really slander against McLeod, but we know he can't block. Like he just can't.
Not the blocks they're asking him.
No. Minor things maybe, but he can't do it, and that limits what you can do. Kyle Pitts can block some things. And he also looks a hell of a lot better as a receiver. He just looks like he's so confident now. And that makes all the difference. It's so hard to explain to people. It's like, yeah, Kyle Pitts last year just, until Penix came in, he just didn't look like he wanted to be there. And like a lot of people criticize him for that, but it's partially on the team for Cousins didn't want to throw him the ball. They weren't really scheming him up much. The previous 2 years, Arthur Smith was basically ignoring him. It hurts. Like it hurts your focus, your ability to go out there. It's a big deal. And could Pitts have handled it better? You mean maybe? Yeah, probably. But this year, it's not the case. Like he clearly trusts Penix. Penix trusts him. He believes that he is a threat on every play, and he's playing like it. And that's huge for him. And it's probably huge for the Falcons because this year it's going to make a big difference for the offense. And they may have a very valuable asset next year, to tag him, and again, maybe if he's a critical part of this offense, you do consider an extension. But at the least, if he's good, you tag and you either work out an extension or you work out a trade and potentially get a premium asset back for a guy who's 23 years old. He's 24.
Yeah, that's the
he's younger than Penix.
He's still a child.
Yeah. And just so this is a great development on so many fronts. And I really like that. Again, everyone was like, oh, the Falcons are just going to play 11. That's what they do. That's what the Rams do. No, they're not going to do that. Apparently they're willing to play 12, on 80% of the snaps. Nobody does that. It's crazy. So I was really impressed by that, even though the offense, again, we have our concerns, red zone, play action, all that stuff. The personnel usage, I think, is really intriguing, and I really like the direction they're going if they are going to a lot more 12 personnel.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I think that's with the Panthers, it's going to be really interesting to kind of see what they do. But just kind of for the rest of the season, because it seemed like, oh, all right, well, game one seems like, it's Zach. We're still doing this 12 personnel dominant. the looks, offense, this, that, and the other. And then my thinking was like, wow, man, well, when Moody comes back, we're definitely not going to be in any 12 or anything. And then lo and behold, Moody comes back. We run the most 12 personnel they've ever run. We saw our guy Teagan out there being used as that extra blocking tight end, like we talked about, where we assumed like, hey, you're keeping 4 tight ends on this roster. We expect one of them to be used more as like an H-back, getting some of these different looks. We saw that with Morgan and with Corintano. So it's great because now, there is this kind of sense of like, unknown in terms of like what this team is going to be able to do. How efficient can they be in these different personnel groupings? If Atlanta can interchangeably go back from 12 and 11 using Pitts as kind of that pseudo wide receiver and or second tight end in those situations, you're going to see a much more dynamic offense that can hopefully take advantage of some of these defenses that are trying to keep, everything, within just 10 to 15 yards from the line of scrimmage in the passing attack, because at some point you're going to make the decision that you have to stop Bijan Robinson in this run game. And I think that's like what Atlanta struggled with last week when we talk about like they outperformed the Bucs. They really lost that game. And if they were able to just generate any kind of the rushing game that they were able to this week, we saw with the strong pistol. I think some people call that Magnum when you have that pseudo fullback there. And that was a really nice adjustment, and it was super simple to do. And it's one of those things where we talked about week to week. We've seen Zach Robinson grow. We've seen him make adjustments week to week. And a lot of our gripes come with what's happening in game. And we thought he did, a little bit of a better job in game last night than he has before. But he really does step up when he needs to and make adjustments, get out of his comfort zone a bit. When going and looking week to week per opponent, and he rose to the occasion. We saw him rise to the occasion against the likes of Fangio last year. I still think he had a really good offensive game plan for the Vikings last year before things got out of hand. And so, we just need to tell Zach Robinson that he's going up against some demented defensive coordinator that is going to definitely be in the Hall of Fame or something at some point every week, and we can start getting some of these better performances out of the offense and out of him. And kind of like we've mentioned that, we're not, in love with the play action offense that we've seen still. And the red zone offense left some things to be desired, but this team took a step in the right direction this week. And as they can continue to address, the areas that are holding them back and respond the way they did this past game, then this team's going to be all right moving forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think that's the critical thing is like, this was a really impressive game. We do still need to clean up some things. The red zone is the big one. I think they do have to involve play action. Like we got to find a way to get that involved. And I think it was a conscious decision this week to just not use it. They didn't want Penix turning his back to the defense and risking just blind sacks or anything like that. It was clearly an ultra conservative game plan, and we now know with the benefit of hindsight, it was clearly the right call. Like just keep it clean, keep it conservative, and just win with your defense, which, I didn't even know that was on the table. So if I had known, maybe I would have had a different take. But yeah, you're allowed to win with defense. I have never seen that before. But now we go into this Panthers game, and per FanDuel, this number has moved towards the Falcons every day now. It started as my 2.5 point favorites on the road, which is still good. That's more like a 4.5 point neutral spread. And now, after last night's game, it was 3.5 favored. Now it's 4.5 favored. I suspect it will continue to move towards Atlanta. But some pretty big numbers there for this Falcons team. Looking like, again, as a road split, but like this is, I think, a critical game because it is a division game. These are all critical. You can't take any of these games lightly. Like, I think what the Falcons need to do here is just like kick the shit out of the Panthers. Like, I think they really need to do that. And if they do, I think we're really going to be starting to feel confident about the direction of this team. If they struggle against this Panthers team, which like, they got their ass kicked by the Jaguars, which is not great for them. And then they did have like a game comeback against the Cardinals, but the Cardinals like blew that game. Like, and they got a heavy ref assist at the end, the Panthers to stay alive.
Oh man, it was egregious. Plus,
Yeah.
I think like at some point it was like 3 of the starting like secondary players were hurt as well.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of defensive backs go down, which helped out with you have to pass every play.
Yeah. So, I think the best thing the Falcons can do here is just dominate this Cardinals team in their own building. That would, getting just a convincing win is fine, but I think if you want Falcons fans to feel really good, you need to really beat up on this Panthers team that, they got the better of you at the end of the year with a defense that was just like, I cannot think of a more like rapid change from week 18, 2025 to week 1, of 2025, 24 to 25. Like, that was the worst defense I've maybe ever seen. Like, that was so bad. I'll never forget Leonard Floyd
I know what you're thinking of already.
Lorenzo Carter lined up off the screen. Like, you can't see him on the end zone field. It's like
Lorenzo Carter in the slot.
I know Carter's here. I saw him from the other view, but where the hell is he? So he has to rush from the slot. It's like, oh, this man is a psychopath. Like, I don't know what this defense, to go from that to this defense. I don't think like the Panthers, if they're thinking they're going to play that defense next week, they're in for a world of hurt. And that Panthers team is beat up as hell now on the offensive line, and we've seen Bryce Young completely melt when that protection is not there. So how are you feeling about this Panthers matchup at this early point in the week?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the same thing that I said on the Norse code last week, which is I'm not gonna dive too much into the injuries that the Panthers are dealing with, right? Because everybody's dealing with injuries, everybody's got to figure out, and I'm just really looking at it from kind of the same perspective you are, Kevin, in that this is a game you have to go out and just emphatically win, especially as an offense. They were in the same situation when they went to face the Panthers on the road the first time last year, and they needed a get-right game, especially for their run game. They were struggling beforehand going into that one, and I think it was a 200-yard day on the ground. And so, I'm expecting kind of, a similar attitude going into this one, in that the offense now, the special teams defense stepped up last week, and then it's going to be on them to step up this week, take advantage of that matchup, and just get the job done, because this is a very winnable game. This is a division game. We already have that first, division loss, which, it's not the end of the world, but you can't let those stack. And this is like the year, Falcons, where I need you guys to just sweep the Panthers. Got to get it done. This is just one of those teams where at this stage where they are and where you are, you're supposed to be the better team. This is a game that you should come in and show that. Can't play down the competition.
No, like, if you want to be taken seriously, like the NFL is taking notice now. They are, like, after that win over the Vikings, now everyone's ears are kind of perking up, like, oh, maybe we do need to pay attention to this Falcons team. Everyone was immediately ready to write them off after week 1. We know that. They were already assuming the Bucs were going to dominate that game. The Bucs did not dominate that game. The Falcons outplayed them. They just lost because Falcons. But now they beat the crap out of one of the darling teams of the NFL in the Minnesota Vikings. And if you want to be taken seriously, go beat the crap out of the Panthers. That's what you should do. If you're a 10+ win team, like they're acting like they are, and if they look like they do against the Vikings, they probably are a 10+ win team. So go out and prove it. Like, go out there, beat up your division opponent, get to 1-1 in the division, get to 2-1 with some difficult games on deck, and put yourself in a good position going into your bye week. I think that's what they have to do, and I think they're set up well for that outcome. Again, it's a division game that it's a lot to ask you to just dominate division opponents, any division opponents, even if they suck, right? It just doesn't happen that often. But I would still like a convincing win. Maybe it doesn't need to be 2 scores or anything crazy, but a convincing win over the Panthers would go a long way for how everyone's, I think, feeling about this team going into a potentially difficult matchup with the Commanders. I mean, I guess we're monitoring another injury there with Jaden Daniels potentially missing this week and next. So maybe a little break there with the Commanders, but I would assume that he's going to play, guys. So, like, I would not assume that that's going to be an easy game in the slightest. So, yeah, get this big dub against the Panthers and let's roll. I'm feeling pretty good about that. But anything else you want to touch on, Tre'Shon, before we wrap up?
No, nothing from me. Enjoy. It'll be Tuesday when this airs, but I hope everybody enjoyed their victory Monday, first one, and on bold take, not the last victory Monday you'll be experiencing this season. And get ready to watch Falcons take on the Carolina Panthers.
Yep. I'm looking forward to it. I think it would have been. I'm so glad they got to 1-1 because the discourse after 0-2 is just so toxic for everyone. We've dealt with that a lot. And I don't ever want to deal with that. No one does. So that's kind of why I was like, yeah, you just can't do it. You got to find a way. And they did. They didn't just find a way. They did it absolutely convincingly. So now continue the good vibes, beat this Panthers team that's reeling from a lot of injuries, and move on to your next tough matchup in week 4, and we'll hope for the best there. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to Tuesday Takes on the Dirty Birds of Bruce podcast presented by FanDuel. We are going to hopefully be back Wednesday for a Falcoholic Live, assuming my flights are on time. If they're not on time, we'll either have to skip it if I'm really delayed, or if I'm delayed, we may be able to do it a little bit later than 8 p.m., but we'll keep you guys posted with how that's going. We will have a game preview breaking down this Panthers matchup a little bit more coming to you on Friday as well. And then, of course, post-game coverage on Sunday, another 1 p.m. game, so no more late shift coverage for now. It's always interesting recording at like 11:30 at night after like 3 beers, but we do it for you guys. But make sure to go follow Tre'Shon Diaz at Tre'Shon. He's at All Trey Phases as well, the new YouTube channel. Go check out those clips. If you just go check it out. I don't even need to explain it anymore. Go check it out. You can also find it on the Falcoholic. If you have trouble finding the channel for whatever reason, it's in the featured channels on the Falcoholic's YouTube as well. You can scroll down there and click it. I don't know what that does, but I hope that it helps in some way.
Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I assume if you click it, it helps. So yeah, go for that. Yeah. And speaking of, like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're trying to get to 10K subscribers by the end of the season. We're inching closer to 9,000. You could help us out there. Leave that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. That helps out a bunch as well. If you want to support the show even more, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/FalcoholicLive, or sign up for the YouTube channel memberships. Really appreciate all that. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning into Tuesday Takes here on the Dirty Birds of Bruce podcast. We will see you guys next time. Have a great day, folks. Enjoy that sweet, sweet victory, the first of the season. Very hopefully not the last. So that would be pretty dire if we were talking about that at this point. So, thanks for hanging out, guys. We'll see you next time.